All right, go to Mark 5. If you don't have your Bibles, pull up your phones.
Or I can just listen.
Yes, you could just listen. Mark 5:21. Are you there?
No.
Anybody want to read?
I will.
Okay, go ahead.
Too late. How far am I reading?
We're ultimately going to get to 43.
So, 43. Oh, the whole thing.
Well, you don't have to do the whole thing. You can do like to 30 if you want to.
Okay.
But if you want to go further, just go until you stop.
When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him. "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciple answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion, with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The children is not dead but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, which means little girl, which means little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat.
You know what's interesting? Let's go back to the beginning. And thank you. Very good job. Interesting story, do you think?
Yeah.
Why? Jesus was sitting there, he taught, he came across the lake, everybody's coming. And what's the first thing that happens?
A lady.
Yeah, synagogue leader Jairus comes up to her and says, "My daughter's dying." Why is that significant?
Because she knows Jesus can heal him.
He's desperate, isn't he? His daughter is dying. And he's probably heard a lot about Jesus. Now the Jews, the leaders of the Jews, how excited were they about Jesus in general? Well, they were excited, I guess. Were they excited positively or negatively?
Negatively.
No.
Often negatively. But here comes a synagogue ruler. Now, in a synagogue, by the way, in a town you had to have 10 Jewish families to have a synagogue. Now, it was not hard to do that in Israel. There's a lot of Jewish families. Almost everybody was Jewish. However, you had to have at least 10, and then almost every one of those head of the families would have a role in the synagogue. Some would be part of the elders. One would be the synagogue ruler. The other one would be a synagogue keeper of the records and of the scripture. I mean, I'm trying to think of all the different jobs, but they'd have these different jobs. But the synagogue ruler comes up to Jesus. Now, if you heard about all these miracles and your child was sick, what would you do?
Miracles.
Huh?
Miracles.
Miracles. I'd be going after the one that they're all saying does it, right? And I'd be excited about that, because what would you do if your child was sick? Now, I'm going to tell you right now, that is hard. When your kids are sick, that's the worst. I would much rather be sick than the kid sick. I remember my middle son stopped breathing one time, next to him choked, and then stopped breathing and laid there limp. And he had a temperature seizure. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. But a temperature seizure is when the body gains more than a couple degrees in seconds. And it's like if you ever plug too many things in a socket, it trips the breaker. The body will do that if it's gaining temperature very fast. It'll shut down and reset. I didn't know the reset part. All I know is went. And so I'm telling you, it was freaky. I swept his mouth. There was nothing. I thought he was choking on something. He started breathing again. We called 911 and went to the emergency room where they had to put an IV in a little 18-month-old kid who kept looking at his dad like, "Why are you letting them hurt me? Really, they're hurting me. Why are you letting them?" And he was crying, looking at me like it was horrible. He goes to Jesus, "My daughter's dying." Do you think that was hard for him?
Yeah.
Why?
It was Jesus.
When someone's sick, you don't want to leave them.
There's two sides of this. Your daughter's very ill. You don't want to leave her. Yeah, you do, like you said, anything to make her better. Anything. So you get into this situation. You just hit me. Something else just hit me. All right. You get in that situation, we'll go take care of it. Now, what would you think the synagogue leader would have liked to have happen right there?
Jesus say, "Okay, I'll come."
Okay, and then start running. Yeah, how did that work out?
Not very well.
No, it started getting slower. Now, everybody wanted to see Jesus. We'll stop there. Notice he never left Jesus. Did you notice that? Mm-hmm. That was his one shot. He had faith enough to wait on Jesus. But the waiting couldn't have been easy, could it? If your child's home sick, the waiting is not easy. There's a lesson here, and we'll come back to it. On the way, they meet this woman. But do they really meet this woman?
No.
No.
Well, they ultimately do, but yes, not initially. She was sick. She had a medical condition for how many years did it say?
12.
12 years. Do you think she prayed about it?
No. Yes.
Probably.
Probably. She went to the physician. She was a Jew. She probably went to the temple, offered up sacrifice. She probably did a lot of everything she could for 12 years, guys. 12 years.
And by law, she wasn't allowed out of the house.
Yeah, really. Yeah, because she was unclean. There's a situation where she was doing everything she could. She paid all these doctors, and they didn't do anything. And so she hears about this Jesus. 12 years she had this. Why do you think she had this so long?
So she'd come to Jesus?
Could be very, very close. Remember, we see something later in Scripture where there's a young man that was born blind. He was blind for 30 years until Jesus healed him. God has a hand in things, and he makes things happen. So she goes up. Does she stop Jesus?
No.
What'd she do?
Touches his clothes.
Why? What are clothes?
She believed that if she touched his clothes, that she would be healed.
Okay, was it the clothes or just the fact that it was his?
Just the fact that it was his.
Dude, it was Jesus. All I got to do is do this. Now we see later in the New Testament, handkerchiefs of Paul were sent to people and they were healed. And it wasn't because Paul was all that, it was because of who Paul served. Here, if I just touch him, touch his clothes, I'll be healed. Jesus felt power go out of him. Why?
Because it was God. Like, God made the power go through him.
Yeah, what healed the woman?
God.
Her faith.
Her faith. Ultimately, well, and that is true, but it is God's power. I have faith in God to heal me. She had faith that all she had to do is touch Jesus' garment and she'd be healed. But it was 12 years.
That's how old the little girl was.
Was the little girl 12? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's kind of freaky. Never saw that. Never even saw that one coming.
Says on 42, immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old.
Wow. No, that's Close Encounters.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
I was trying to do that. Anyway, okay. So she goes up, touches Jesus, she's healed. And Jesus knows something comes out. Now, he knew somebody had faith and he knew somebody was healed. I really don't understand the power coming out of him. That was an interesting thing. But he had the power. Not like He-Man. It's a whole different thing. So she didn't ask Jesus. She went up and took his power. Did that bug Jesus?
No. Because he knew it wasn't his power.
It was ultimately, the neat thing is somebody had faith in him, and she came up and she felt guilty for that. Did she rob him?
No. God's power never ends, so it's not like you're taking it away and that much less of God's power.
Exactly. So that's kind of cool. It's not a rob. The coolest thing here is, though, what? What was the neatest part of that scene?
I think it was.
And that's neat, because somebody touched me, and the guy's saying, are you kidding me? This is a crowd. You're getting bumped all over the place. Everybody's touching you. No, it's different. What's the coolest thing about this, though?
He knew who touched him.
He knew who touched him. He made them come up and confess it. But also, what did he do to her? It says, your faith. Somebody believed in him enough. Dude, think about the faith it took. It's one thing that says, Master, heal me. And, sometimes you take the mud and spit in it and put it in their eyes, because people had to have some physical thing done to them to explain it. But this woman just, I'm going to touch him and I'll be healed. That's huge faith.
Wait, eat mud and spit them in their eyes? Spit it in their eyes?
He would
Spit in the
take
dirt.
dirt and make mud and put it in their eyes. Every time he healed a blind man, he kind of did it in a different way. It's interesting.
That's what he would do for a blind man.
Well, that's one of the ways. One of the times he just said, see. And they saw. And they, not a seesaw, it was a whole different thing. But I'm sure their emotions were up and down.
Oh, teeter-totter.
Anyway, but here's what's interesting. Let's go back on this time thing. 12 years until she met Christ. But she met Christ, she was healed. Now, by the way, what's going on all this time?
There's a lot of other people.
Patient man's waiting.
Jairus' daughter is sick.
She's dying.
Jairus' daughter is dying.
She's dead.
No, she was sleeping.
Well, no, yeah.
But
No,
they
she.
told him that she was dead.
Sparky ran away.
So it took this long. Jesus stops, talks to this woman, and Jairus never leaves Jesus. And in that, why do you think Jesus took that long to go to Jairus' daughter? Why do you think he took that long to go to Jairus' daughter?
Did
See
he
if
want
he
her
really
to
had
suffer?
faith.
Or did he want to make sure that he waited for her? The 12.
The woman, the other woman.
with the 12 years of mental problems.
Maybe it was just the day
Bleeding.
of 12s.
Hemophilia.
It was the year of the 12. You know what's interesting about this is, doesn't matter when Jesus goes.
No.
No, ultimately it doesn't. The biggest thing is, for him, he had work to do on the way. But Jairus waited. Guys, when you're waiting on God, you know, you guys are going to have decisions. You're going to want to do things. You're going to, like, even like husbands and wives. You wait on them. God will send them. You pray for that, and the right one, and you wait on him. My question is this: as you wait, why does God make us wait? What?
Test our faith. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, okay. How does it test your faith?
Because he's saying, okay, well, if you have the faith for me, then you'll wait for me to do this.
Oh. Do you think he knows better when it's time?
Yeah, God's timing is perfect. Have you ever heard about that?
Yes, I have. I have not always agreed with it. Have you always agreed with God's
No.
timing?
I have. My book's
Have
all
you
about
always agreed with God?
I have a book that's all about that, and it's all about, like, why can't God do this now? And then he does this at this certain time, and it's all perfect again.
I will tell you, I agree with your statement. God's timing is perfect. As I look back at things in my life and I say, yes, it's probably better. Why? I thought about becoming a minister right out of high school. No. Would not have worked. There was that whole thing of running numbers, flying a plane for the Colombian cartel. None of that would have went well with ministry. Waiting on God grows our faith. Why? Because I trust him. You know, remember that proverb I told you? The one proverb says, God, don't let me have too much money to where I don't wait on you. And don't let me have too little where I steal and dishonor you. Waiting on God, trusting God with everything in your life is a huge way to grow your faith. And the really cool thing is, he is always faithful. So, in this situation, here's Jairus. He leaves his daughter who's dying, goes to the one he knows is the only hope he has, and he waits there. Now, I'm telling you, that's hard.
I would be like, hurry up.
Right. And now he stops in the crowd and says, who touched me? Really? We were heading toward my daughter. Really? Now, in the history of Israel, were people raised from the dead?
Well,
Before
I guess
Jesus?
it's kind of, well, no, but I guess with Jesus, it's kind of how he looks for it. Like, they got rose from the dead from believing in him,
Right.
but
And it's interesting, in the Old Testament, there was a time, a widow's son was raised from the dead by Elijah. He went and prayed over her, raised from the dead. There was another widow's son, and I don't know chronologically if that was before Jairus' daughter or not. There was a woman who was walking out of the town, and her son had just died, his only son, and he stopped the procession, said, boy, get up, and he got up. And he restored her to her son, just like Elijah did in the Old Testament. This has happened, but see, this is not a small thing to raise someone from the dead.
no, this is just like a
It's a huge thing. Now let me ask you this: why did he only take 3 disciples? He told the other ones, "You wait here. I'm just going to take Peter, James, and John." Huh?
Might have had the most faith in him.
Had the most faith. They were pretty close.
But I also think they also had the hardest time. Like, I think that's why I would choose these people. Like, okay, you're having a hard time with this, or like, you need to know me more, so I'm going to send you to do this to help you know me. That's what I would think.
Well, you know what? That's an interesting approach
Yeah.
because Peter went through a lot of trials, didn't he? Think about when he was crucified. Peter, come with me. He took Peter, James, and John to the mountain transfiguration. You remember that scene where he goes up the top of the mountain and he's glorified in front of him? This is, by the way, this is the way I really look. And the lights are turned on. This is me. I'm God. Just so that you could know this. And he went down and dealt with demons.
Yeah.
Okay, Peter, James, and John goes. They go into the house, and everybody laughs at Jesus. Why?
Because he says she's just asleep. She's not dead.
I said, dude, we've been around people for a long time. We know dead. Okay, if there's one thing we know, they hire us to cry for people. We know dead.
But then isn't death sleep?
As a Christian, it's called that in the New Testament
Well, it's
because we don't really die, do we? Or we may see
'Cause, like,
this way.
Asleep in
our
Christ.
body dies, but our spirit raises. So it's really just like snakes, kind of. They have their skin.
But these are Jewish people.
Well, yes, but still. I thought that's what it was called.
Yeah, and it's interesting because remember at this time, there's a big section of Jewish people that don't believe in the resurrection. They don't believe in life after death. And then you have the Pharisees that did, and the Sadducees didn't. That's why they were sad, you see. You heard that, right? Have you heard that? The Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection. That's why they were sad, you see. That's how you remember that. Now you can remember that.
Yeah.
We got to pass these things on. They waited on God. He goes in there,
we don't.
and Jesus gets in there and says, she's sleeping. They make fun of him. Did Jairus laugh?
No.
Dude, what was he just told?
His
His daughter's not dead. I'd just be like,
Yeah, how would that work out?
You'd be dropping your knees, screaming your eyes out.
Except, you know what? It's interesting. Did he sound like he was mad at Jesus?
no, he sounded like,
I'm sorry I'm late. But Jesus said, okay, no, she's just asleep. And what do you think Jairus thought about that?
so is there hope still? Or is he just faking me?
Isn't that interesting? Wouldn't you hold on to it?
I'd just be like, there can be hope. I'm going to hold on to this hope.
Now think about this. You have the woman with 12 years, and she had faith, and ultimately got her faith healed her. Now you have Jairus that's traveled the whole time, waiting, and then finally finds out his daughter dies, and then Jesus said, no, she's just asleep. There's still hope in Jairus. And there's still hope in the only one you can have hope in. And he goes in and says, little girl, Talitha cum. Little girl, get up. Is that her middle name?
No.
That would be hilarious. Talitha cum, little girl, get up. And she did. And they fed her. Why is that significant they fed her? Yes.
Maybe
to make sure that she doesn't die.
Well, what's interesting, it is to make sure of something.
Um,
Ghosts. They believe in ghosts.
oh, that's right. They think the demon, like the devil's the demon inside.
It could have been that, but a big part of it, ghosts don't eat.
Yeah. So
Little girl, get up. Feed her.
if she didn't eat, then it would
Remember what happened when Jesus came and rose from the dead and met all the guys in the room? Hey, you guys got anything to eat? Really? Yeah, I haven't eaten since I died. I'm really dying for something.
No, living.
I'm living for something to eat right now. That didn't I'm just living for something to eat right now. And he eats in front of him. Why? Because ghosts don't eat. In their minds, ghosts don't eat. And that's what they believe. So the little girl rose from the dead. They fed her. She's alive. Guys, let me ask you a question. Does God wait and have you wait? Yes. Why?
Yeah. To teach us
test
patience.
your faith.
And to grow your faith. And you know what? Also because he's much smarter. I'm telling you, there's times that if I'd have got him at a certain time, I would not have appreciated him and I'd have lost him. Here's what we're going to do, guys.
Stand.
Faith, wait on God. If you ever find yourself trying not to wait on God, I'm going to warn you very seriously. I've had people that didn't wait on God for their spouses, and it wasn't the person that God intended, and they, well,
made the
it wasn't
biggest
as good.
mistake of their life.
Wait on God, and He will bring you to a perfect place. His timing is perfect. He knows everything you need. Wait on Him and don't force it. If you're unhappy, give it to Him. If you're excited, praise Him. If you're wondering what's next, ask Him.
It's
And
not like
wait.
you're going to get an answer, though.
Oh,
Sure
yeah,
you are.
you do. You do. It may not be, George, no. I said no.
No.
However, I have had him say that to me.
No. Like,
Dan, no. But I just
Don't
want
eat
no.
dog food.
Yes, well. I will tell you that God is really good about things.
well, I'm talking about he won't answer you right away
Well, he
Sometimes
might.
he doesn't. Why?
because of God's timing.
Now, again, I'm going to go back. The answer is always yes, no, or wait.
And it's usually wait.
Well, and it very often is. But let me just say this again. When you pray to God, it's never about the answers. Please understand that. Have it in your mind. Praying to God is never about the answers. It's always about who you're praying to. Because He's the one that knows all of it. I may have an idea of what the answer I want, and we all do, don't we? But what if it's not it? Yeah, what if that's not it? What if He meant even more for you?
Well, God didn't mean it, so just better deal with it.
Yes. So wait on Him.